Welcome to r/Malicious Compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story, manager disagreed with me, so I found a loophole and did it. The second story, client did not want a woman to fix his car, waited 2 hours, and then left. The third story, they called me and said leave late. Okay, B. Today's first story is Tales from the Law. First off, since this will be a sticking point for a lot of you, I'm an attorney, a prosecutor in fact, and while we're somewhat hated mythological beings of power, corruption, and abuse, the reality is that the vast majority of us are just regular people trying to do our jobs. Me and most of my colleagues are about as average as anyone you'd come across, and you'd probably never tell us from the rest of anyone you might meet at the local book club or coffee shop or whatever. So if that puts you off from this story in any way, I'm sorry, but at least that's out of the way, haha. That said, we can't really discuss our cases in detail or with any specificity, beyond what you can see in public record. So, by necessity, this story will be a bit, generalized. Even so, it's absolutely true, and was quite a bit of fun to do. Now, the good part. The Malicious Compliance. The office I used to work for had several layers of management, as you'd expect from just about any organization ever. The lowest level, the direct supervisors, did most of the day-to-day managery stuff, and they're most comparable to the managers you'd have at any other job. There was this one who, to his credit, was fairly intelligent, but was also a bit strict in his interpretations of things. He knew stuff, but I just didn't quite jive with his, philosophy. Not that it was evil, but definitely not my particular taste in how prosecutors should function. More on that later. So anyway, an issue comes up. I have a folder with a violation of probation case come across my desk and I open it up. Upon review, I find that the reason this person was violated was rather questionable to me. In fact, I'm not even sure you can violate someone for such a thing. And so I jumped into the online law library, West, and started to do some research. Side note, if you don't know what a violation of probation is, VOP, fear not. The vast majority of criminal cases in most states are resolved by putting the person on one or another form of supervision, usually called probation, to keep them out of jail. It reduces the number of people in jail, gives most people a chance to keep functioning while they do their sentence, etc. It's usually a win-win. Thing is, it comes with certain codes of conduct and conditions. If you break one of those rules, you end up back in the courtroom to be sentenced again. You're exposed to the exact same potential jail time you would have been without probation, and this time you just have a quick hearing on the violation, and maybe sentencing, instead of a full trial. So you can imagine that there are things that do and things that do not count as violations of probation. The one on my desk at the moment was something that, according to a few appellate cases in my area, did not count. Silly me, thinking the issue was open and shut, went to manager and asked for permission to drop the VOP. He said no. Stunned, I was thinking maybe he just wasn't aware of the recent cases, so I showed them to him and explained this isn't really a violation. He still said no. He then explained that in his reading of these cases, the courts had created a defense to violating probation, but that it would be up to the defendant and his or her lawyer to raise the issue, establish that it applied to them, etc. He said that unless and until they did so, we should proceed. That's the part that doesn't line up with my personal system. I didn't agree with him on this point, thinking that if the courts were inclined to think that this issue once proven wasn't a violation, and knew that it was true based on what was in front of me, I just shouldn't proceed. I think prosecutors should not be on team state, but rather somewhat neutral arbiters of the law, similar to judges. Just judges with access to evidence, etc. Whatever, point is, I don't agree with his take. So, here comes the MC. It took me a while to realize the loophole here, but once I did, I had to laugh about it. I printed out the cases, then wrote up a motion to dismiss the VOP based on them. I didn't sign the motion, or put it on our letterhead, but I did use our standard form generator, which creates a document that fairly obviously came from us. I then emailed all of that to the defense attorney and texted him to put his name on it. If he found it in good faith to be true and applicable, no misconduct here, and then file it. He laughed his A off, then did exactly that. I then brought this motion to manager and said, well, seems like the defense spotted the issue. Can't fight this in good faith. He took one look at it, realized exactly what happened, then glared at me. Then he just smiled and said, well done. Go ahead and drop it. Don't do that again. We're not always able to make our own decisions. In my particular jurisdiction, there's an elected state attorney who has all the actual power in the agency, and the rest of us are appointed and are simply delegations of his authority. Indeed, when you sign a document, it has his name at the bottom. So I don't actually have the authority to do whatever I want on my cases. I only have the authority to do whatever he approves, which for the most part is a non-point, because I do all work on my cases. But for certain issues where he has decided that management needs to approve before a thing is done, then I can't do it until management approves. In absolute terms, I could walk into the courtroom and do something without his approval. It would be legally binding, but the only situation where you would actually do that is if you've encountered a gross miscarriage of justice. The example above is not that extreme. It's subject to interpretation on how you view the role of a prosecutor. While many may disagree with how my manager saw it, including me, he's neither objectively wrong or objectively unjust in holding that view. Anything so horribly unjust as to cause me to go against supervisor authority would both cost me my job and probably not be an issue in the first place, because nobody I've ever worked for has been that unreasonable. The next story is, you don't want a woman working on your car? That's fine, but you're going to be waiting a long time. Many years ago, I worked at a car dealership. The attached service garage was small, and I was the only licensed mechanic. I would occasionally have issues with male customers. They would second-guess my diagnoses, watch me while I worked on their cars from the bay door, double-check my work in the parking lot, etc. I didn't deal with customers directly, and would often get my apprentice to pull cars in and out of the shop for me. This morning in particular, we were busy. The lot jockey and apprentice were occupied helping wash cars for delivery and driving to a customer's house. The service advisor left a work order and keys at the parts counter, and I went out the front through service to get the car. It was in for a service campaign, which was an update done with a scan tool. It takes about 10 minutes. The customer was planning on waiting and was sitting in service. When he saw me with his keys in my hand, he immediately stood up alarmed. I was hustling, so I walked right by him and out the door. I missed the following conversation, according to the service advisor, also female. Customer, who's that chick? Is she gonna be working on my car? I don't want her working on my car. Advisor, the other tech's out at the moment, so it's gonna be quite a wait until someone else can look at your car. C, that's fine. I'll wait for a guy. I don't want that chick touching my car. A, politely, understood. The advisor comes to let me know, and I pull the car out and put the work order and keys back on the counter nonplussed. Half an hour passes. The apprentice is still away, and I'm happily working on something else, bringing other cars in and out. The customer is now watching each and every person who comes through the door. The high school co-op student comes in to get something signed. The customer's keys are still sitting on the desk. It's been about an hour now. C, hey, why hasn't my car gone in yet? Can't you get this guy to do it? A, no sorry, he's just a co-op student, so he's not allowed to drive the cars, due to liability and insurance concerns. C, just get someone else to bring in the car, and he can do the work. This was supposed to take 10 minutes. A, sorry sir, he's just a high school student doing his co-op. He's not approved to perform warranty work. Only licensed techs and apprentices can do the recall. The car jockey returns. The advisor hands the car jockey a different set of keys, and he brings yet another car into the shop for me. The customer is becoming incensed. C, I've been sitting here for over an hour and I've watched 5 cars go in before mine. My appointment was for 8 a.m. This is getting ridiculous. Blah, blah, blah. At this point, he says that he literally doesn't care who does the recall, but that it has to be a guy. The service advisor starts listing off the names of the men who work in the dealership, then saying why they can't perform the recall. Well, there's Harmon, but he's just the car jockey. He doesn't know how to work on cars. Then there's Jeet, but he's about 17. I wouldn't want him doing the recall personally. I guess we could ask Mike, but Mike is the parts guy. He doesn't know how to use the scan tool. The detailers are men, but they know nothing about cars. The customer is fuming at this point and demands to talk to the service manager. The manager comes out of his office and guides the customer into the garage. He's pretty old school, lights up a cigarette standing at the end of my bay and points at me. That's my best technician. Those guys take orders from her. You can either wait for her to finish what she's working on, and then you can ask if she's still willing to do your work, or you can take your car somewhere else. The guy was pretty shook up at this point, and he took his car and left, 2 hours after he'd first arrived. I don't think we ever saw him again, which was not much of a loss, all things considered. That manager in particular always stuck up for me and took my side. The service advisor has this very deadpan sense of humor. She knew full well it would easily be an hour before the apprentice would return from his errand, and that no one else could do the recall. This was not the first sexist we had encountered. And the last story is, leave late? Okay. I'm a bus driver. I drive a bus. This is a story about bus driving. Edit for clarity. Plus means I'm early, minus means I'm late. So -5 means 5 minutes late. I was driving on a quiet weekday afternoon. It was dead, so I was dragging my feet trying not to be too early. As I passed through a very busy highway interchange, I got a text through the bus from dispatch asking me to ease back to 2 minutes early. Since I'm surrounded by semis barreling past me at 30 over the limit, while I'm doing 20 under, there's no way I'm popping my hazards in parking and getting rear-ended or causing an accident if someone swerves around me. So I take my time at the stops until I find a bus bay or turn lane to kill my time, but he texts again. I ignore it and kill a light at the next major street where it's safe. He said ease back to 2 minutes early. I'm 2 minutes early. Perfect. Again, I'm taking my time. Again, I start climbing to 3, 4, 5 minutes early. Then comes another text. Nowhere safe to stop. I continue. Now he calls me. I try to explain the safety concerns, but he doesn't really care. Whatever, next major street, I ease back to 1 minute early despite being asked to go to 2 minutes early. Look at me going above and beyond. When I'm at the light right before the terminal station, I'm too early again. He calls again and reams me out, saying I'm gonna have to put in a report. You're not listening, blah blah blah. I lose my temper a bit and basically yell, you asked for 2 minutes early. I went 2 minutes early. You asked again, I went 1 minute early. It's dead out, it's not my fault. I ease back every time you ask me to. I'm driving safely. I'm not gonna put anyone in danger for the schedule. What do you want from me? You've been on my case this whole trip. It's distracting and bordering on harassment. He tells me, if you know you're gonna be early, leave late. Okay, fine. One thing I should note at this point is that safety is a bit of a magic word where I work. You mention a reasonable safety concern, that's the end of the discussion. Now I can't say, oh, I need to stop and sit in a coffee shop for 45 minutes because safety, but any real safety concern is taken very seriously. I get to the station, park my bus and hit the head. I sit in the break room until I'm 5 minutes late, then saunter over to my bus. I'm in the bus 8 minutes late. I pull up to the bay, pick up my people, and leave 10 minutes late. Lots of people now, probably because rush hour just started. 12 minutes late, 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. He calls again when I'm about halfway up at 25 minutes late. Tersely. Hello, more like butt driver. May I ask the reason you're late for my report? Busy. Is it vehicular traffic, construction, passenger load? What is it? Yeah, all that. I'm busy. Thank you, goodbye. He calls again on the way down. Hello, more like butt driver. I'm gonna need you to do a change off with bus number 1234. This is when you switch buses with a driver going the opposite direction to get back on time. Can't do it. I need to use the restroom at the station. Okay, goodbye. He finally gets me to do a change off on the way up on my next trip. At this point, I've been 30 to 40 minutes late for over 2 hours, basically completely effing up his line. You'd think I'd get called to the office and chewed out, right? Wrong. See, he made a lot of mistakes that would land him in more hot water than me. First, the constant texts and calls could reasonably be called harassment, as he's singling me out and distracting me from my duties. Second, he ignored the magic word, safety, safety, safety. Third, he told me to leave late, and I was just complying with his orders. Fourth, he must have been asleep at his console not to notice I left 10 minutes late from the station. And since all calls and texts are recorded, I have irrefutable proof of all of it. So to cover his own A, he just pretended the whole thing never happened. Hit the like button to support the channel. I appreciate it for every like you put under the video.